Now every 6 months, we open up our smartphone shelf. We charge each phone to 50%, turn it on, check for software updates, and then turn it off and put them back. But this time around, they were casualties. Phones that won't turn on, batteries puffed up, and screens gone bad. But one phone from year 2021 turned on as if nothing has happened. Yep, this phone, the Poco F3. So I put my SIM card back in, use it as my daily driver again 5 years after the launch. So how does this phone help 5 years later? Well, watch first and buy smart. Now, first of all, let's talk about why this phone survived compared to many others that didn't. Because this phone had no wears at the back or even at the sides. Now, the only sign of age is the few minor scratches on the screen itself, but that is only visible if you turn off the screen and have a torchlight shine towards the top part of the phone. So it's not something that you would see when you use the phone daily, which means that the Corning Gorilla Glass 5 protection on the screen matches the number, because 5 years in, still holding great. Now, going back to this slim form factor after using today's thicker flagship still feels very refreshing. It made me question again, how did we all just accepted these bulky phones as the new normal? Now, this may sound a little far-fetched, but sometimes I feel like I'm using the brand new iPhone Air because of how slim this phone is. Now, the camera bump is low profile, but it's not something like the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus where there is barely a camera bump, to a point where it doesn't wobble, because when you're typing this phone on the surface, the phone does wobble a bit, specifically towards the bottom right. Then there's this, the side-mounted fingerprint sensor. I almost forgot how good this was because it unlocks very fast, it's also very reliable, and I keep asking myself why. Why did phone companies move away from this side-mounted fingerprint sensor? Because it's so freaking natural to unlock it, especially if you register your right thumb. If you're holding the phone with your right hand, very easy to unlock. Or you can register your left middle finger if you're holding the phone with your left hand. Now, you may think that this is like going back to a manual gear shift after using automatic. To me, this is the real automatic transmission when it comes to unlocking smartphones. Then the matte back also held up very well with no fingerprints at all, and yes, it still feels very great in the hand after 5 years of use. So I would give the design and the build quality a rating out of 5 out of 5 star, and yes, it's a very generous rating, but it is totally honest. Next, the display, and this is where things get a little mixed because the colors on the display is really amazing. As you guys can clearly see over here, it looks like it was painted on, almost like you have a mini Samsung Frame TV in your hands. So yes, the AMOLED panel really has held up very well over the years. Now, watching videos on it still feels like a proper treat. No dead pixels, no burn-in, nothing. But here's the catch though. In a dimly lit room, the display does get a little too bright, and I find myself manually pulling the brightness down. Not all the time, but often enough that I realized that I really needed to, especially when I'm in a basement car park going into my car, where the automatic brightness takes a while for it to go to the ideal brightness value. But then again, everything makes sense only if you remember that this phone was launched before automatic brightness got smarter on the budget flagships. So this is one area that shows the age. But with that, I would still give the display a rating out of 4 out of 5 stars. So for everyday use, for browsing, messaging, streaming, scrolling, this phone still keeps up just fine. No real hesitation when opening apps or switching between them, which for a 5-year-old Snapdragon 870 chipset, it is honestly still very impressive. So your daily use from light to medium, this chip has still some fight left in it. So I would give the performance on the phone a 4 out of 5 stars. Yep, a very short and sweet segment for this particular performance. Now, if you guys are finding this video helpful so far, do give this video a nice big thumbs up to tell the people running the YouTube algorithm that this video was good for you, and a subscription would be extra sweet too. So thank you, and thank you very much in advance. Now let's talk about the software, because the moment I turned on the phone, it needed a software update, which was great. So the first 5 minutes after that, The phone was a little laggy, apps took longer to open, and once everything has settled down, then it went back to running smoothly, so no crashes, no logging issues, nothing weird after that. However, there is a part that might sting you a little if you're using this phone right now, because the Poco F3 is stuck on Xiaomi's HyperOS version 1, and as of the recording of this video, the version is at 1.0.6.0 because Xiaomi's newer HyperOS 3 update list goes as far back as only the F7 series. So the F3 has officially been left behind. So if you're reviving an old phone like this, give it a few moments to breathe or a few minutes to breathe, but do not expect any more feature updates to come this way. But what still comes your way are the random ads. Because yes, it's still there. So I would give the software a rating out of 3 out of 5 stars. Now let's talk about the cameras, because for my 3-year review video, that's where things got a little interesting, because back then the native app and the Gcam app almost was neck to neck in the daytime shots. However, 5 years in, the Gcam app decides not to load. So I just used the native app. But yeah, the biggest yes for me is the 1x and the 2x camera photos as seen in these sample photos. And while the ultra-wide lenses also look really nice, but if I had to nitpick a little, the colors look a little inconsistent when it comes to having that side by side with the main lenses, where it look a bit more saturated specifically for the ultra-wide shot during the day. Then portrait mode is also still great during the day, and my advice is not to turn on the AI mode in the camera app specifically when it comes to the portrait mode to give you that more natural portrait photos. And it was not only great for people but also for objects, as you can see over here. Then the selfie portrait photos also look nice as long as you have some light shining towards your face. Video wise, the ultra wide lenses, albeit recording only up to 1080p, but the quality and the stabilization were great, and the 4K video for the 1x and the 2x was still good too. For the front camera, the 1080p footage was also decent and had great stabilization too. Then the consistency between the colors and the quality between the ultra wide and the main lenses, believe it or not, were better at night, which was interesting, and the main and the 2x photo was also looking great. And I purposely left the AI turned on for the portrait mode when I was taking some portrait mode shots at night, and it turned out ugly as hell, as you can see, so please turn it off. Then for objects, it was as great as during the day. Then the selfie photos were decent as long as there's some minimal backlight and as long as there's some amount of light shining towards you once again. Then video wise, the nighttime video was also decent for the ultra wide and the main 1x mode, but do expect some noise built up for the 2x video. Then as for the front video camera, was also as good as long as you have some light towards you, just like the selfie photos as well, with some very good stabilization over here. So I would give the camera a rating out of 3 out of 5 stars. Now another short segment but an important one to test is how good is the speaker after 5 years. But the very good news is that the stereo speakers after 5 years is still going very strong, no cracking, no distortion, still loud and clear from both of the earpiece and the bottom firing speaker. Not the loudest out there, but for the price and age, I would give the sound rating a 4 out of 5 star. Now, if you want a written version of this video and all of our video reviews, we do have one at our website at www.adamlobo.tv. Links to the website will be down below, where we also have some daily tech tips and daily tech news over there too. Next, let's talk about the battery, because this was already the weak point 2 years ago. Now, back in my 3-year video that I did, I was only getting about 2.5 hours to 3 hours of screen on time at 10% battery with dark mode turned on, but that was already a huge drop from the 5.5 hours that I was getting when the phone was first launched. So the question going into this test was simple: how much worse could it possibly be after 5 years? Well, here's the good news. It did last me during the whole entire day without charging, but the bad news is that I used the phone for everything except for gaming and taking lots of photos and videos, and even in a very light use. I was getting an average of 2 hours plus of screen on time, but I was at 20% battery at around 11:29 p.m, where I started the day at 10:18 a.m. with 3 minutes of screen on time. Now, I wouldn't call the battery life horrible per se, but at the same time, it does continue to degrade. So I would give the battery a rating out of 3 out of 5 stars. But everything only makes sense if you can still buy the Poco F3 in year 2026, right? Well, you won't be able to find it brand new anymore, but the second-hand market is still very much alive. Platforms like Carousell and Muda still have listings floating around, which I'll leave links down below for you guys to check it out, as there are many over there coming from different price ranges as well. So it's not impossible possible to find one. It's just that you won't be getting brand new out of the box. So going back into that smartphone shelf, phones have puffed up batteries, phones that won't even turn on, and then there is this, the Poco F3. 5 years later, still turns on, still works, still feels good in the hand. Now this phone was never meant to be a forever phone, but let me know what you guys think, and would you get this Poco F3 5 years in?